In this lesson, we'll cover advanced camera parameters. Let's start with an interactive render. Then go to the V-Ray Asset Editor, and let's go ahead and switch on Material Override. You'll notice the lighting's already been set up for a night shot. You can click on the Lights tab, and for the lights here, you can fly out the menu and decide to play with any of the options if you'd like, or just experiment with them to see what sort of realistic values were given to each light. But once you've done that, let's go ahead and fly that menu back in and go over to the settings. Here's where we find the camera options. Go ahead and click to twirl this option down, and you'll see here's the standard camera. If you click this icon here, you'll switch to the advanced camera settings. You'll see now that you have these three options for the film sensitivity, the ISO, the f number, which controls the aperture, and the shutter speed. And these three options have been here all along. They've just been hidden underneath the exposure value. The exposure value, it turns out, when you switch it, really only just the film sensitivity. The aperture and the shutter speed are left alone. That's because they control things like depth of field and motion blur. Let's take a look at how to set these up for a typical night shot. For the film sensitivity, you can play around with the slider and notice that if you slide the slider to the right, it becomes much brighter, and at lower values, the image becomes much more dark. After you've played around with those, let's go ahead and settle on a value of 400. Next is the aperture, which controls the lens speed. Again, play with the slider, and you'll notice that bigger values create darker images, and smaller values create brighter ones. For this, we'll pick 5.6, which is a common setting for real-world cameras. Finally, we have the shutter speed. Again, slide the slider, and you'll see that larger values create darker images, and lower values create brighter ones. We'll go ahead and set this value to 1, as that's a common value for a night shot. With each of these values set, go ahead and uncheck Material Override, and let V-Ray re-render the scene.